I'm very excited.
You ready?
This is the time where everything kind of comes together, and I'm just trying to enjoy it as much as I possibly can.
Yeah. So you talk about your accent, and obviously as a Paralympic athlete, we all know that you either would have been born with something or something happened in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So September 2002,
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us back to that kind of time in your life? You were 19 years old,
Yeah.
and just the day and then kind of the days following and that journey.
Yeah, I was 19, so I was really young, and at that time just really didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I was very just indecisive. I had just graduated from high school. I went to a continuation school because I didn't do as well as I was hoping in high school. Of course, distractions with friends and all that, and I was living life at 19. I thought I knew everything. And just one afternoon, we were out wakeboarding, as we had done almost every day after school. We just headed to the other side of the water and other side of the lake for better water. And I was sitting on the railing of the wakeboard boat. And I wasn't paying attention, and I remember just hitting a crosswake and falling into the water. And when I fell into the water, I remember feeling the rope, or the ski rope, kind of wrapped around my neck and my arm and my leg. And I luckily had the conscience to be able to know that rope was still attached to the boat, because we were just wakeboarding a few minutes before that. So I unraveled the rope from my neck and my arm just in time, and it kind of cinched up around my leg and then went down to my ankle. And I remember hearing the sound of the rope unraveling, going zzz, 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 and it had cut all the way through the skin, and then when it got to the handle, pulled my ankle off completely. And I didn't even know then, because it happened so quickly, that I was injured. I thought maybe I just dislocated something, and so I swam over to the swim deck, and my friends were like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "I fell in the water. I need you to come get me." And I got up onto the swim deck of the boat, and I pulled my leg out, and as I pulled my leg out, I just saw blood, and I saw it almost looked like speaker wire coming out of my leg, and that was all the tendons and arteries, and I just lost it right there, and I started screaming at the top of my lungs. And my friends kind of freaked out, but at least they were able to hold it together enough to get a towel, and we wrapped it around like a tourniquet. So it was just this chaotic moment that is very dreamlike for me when I try to think of what had happened that day. And a lot of things, it's funny because every time I tell the story, sometimes it's a little bit different every time that I tell it, because it was so, I wasn't in the moment there. It was so chaotic. And so that was how I had lost my leg. Instantly there, the rope had severed it. They took me to the hospital, and I sat in the waiting room for, I think, 8 hours because they couldn't find a surgeon. Yeah, it's crazy. 8 hours I sat in the waiting room, but I think the doctors knew that the leg wasn't going to be able to be saved. And it was just a matter of getting me into surgery to have that, whatever was left, removed.
So you were 19 years old, out of high school, living the life at 19. What was that transition for you from kind of who you were before and transitioning into who you've become, and that process of, was there any grief of losing that part of your leg? Was there that period where you kind of questioned everything that happened, or did you move on pretty quickly from it all?
It was a very strange couple of years after that, because most people, they would go through something like that and they would grieve the loss of their leg, or they would, recover immediately. And it was weird because after I lost my leg, I was so positive, like almost overly positive for a while, and my parents were like, he doesn't even care that he lost his leg, and it was just me kind of pushing things away for a while. And for a few years, I just kind of just lingered and didn't do a whole lot, but was trying to be positive, and didn't know who I identified as, didn't know what I wanted to do as a career, and so I think there was a delayed onset there of the grieving process, and it took me some time to really look at what had happened in my life and how I could really embrace that and move forward. So it was definitely a time period where that took some time.
I think it's interesting, every athlete in the Paralympic space, when you hear their stories, it's so different. A, how it happens. B, if some are born with their injuries, some happen later in life, and then how they deal with it. But I know even in my own situation, I was almost 19 2 months before, and when it happened, it was almost that conflicting emotion of society wanted to put me in the bucket of being now somebody with a physical disability, but I didn't feel different, and so my heart and my mind were conflicting with identifying with the wheelchair or without it. And I think that's a really interesting, especially at that age. I mean, you were the same age, and so figuring out what that means, did you ever have a moment where you felt like not only did you have the internal struggle of identifying, but you felt kind of lost in the chaos of life, trying to figure out where you fit in terms of where you kind of fell into place after it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's just it right there, just figuring out who you identify as.
What helped you when you finally what was the factor? Was it one thing or was it multiple things that kind of helped you get out of that funk and move on?
I don't know. It wasn't a particular thing that had happened, but I think that when I remember everything changing is after I decided to get clean and sober. And because during that entire process of me trying to figure things out and grieve the loss of my leg and figure out my future, I just wouldn't get rid of some of the relationships and friendships that I had that were unhealthy in my life prior to that. And so I kind of just stayed in this bubble. And I was just doing a lot of drinking, and that was masking, of course, some of the things that I needed to deal with. And I would just drink instead of trying to deal with the pain of those things. And when I decided to get sober, I think that I kind of woke up from it all, and I was like, wow, like I'm actually feeling things now. This is what it feels like to be, upset or emotional or angry. And so that's when all of a sudden I began to change the way that I looked at things, and it was a new awakening for me for sure.